answer your questions satisfactorily. Okay, so let me share the screen and just let me know if it is visible to you all or not.
Well,
Is it?
Madam Seta, you go ahead. It is visible on the
Yeah.
screen.
Thank you so much, sir, again. So as sir has told, I am associated with the Electronics Engineering Department, SVNIT, Surat, Gujarat. So basically my talk is related to the GNSS error sources, interference and multipath issues. Basically, my journey has started with the NAVIC introduction with the ISRO, and there,
Seta, can you make it in the slide mode so your screen will be little bigger?
yeah, let me. I guess there is some issue with the sharing. Let me do it again, sir. Just give me a minute. I guess I need to share the whole screen, so that would be easy. And it
Otherwise,
won't.
you continue.
No, no, it's fine, sir. Now I hope it is fine.
Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so my journey related to the GNSS has started with the ISRO lab and NAVIC. Basically, that was the first thing that I started dive into it. That something has given a spark to me that I need to do something related to the navigation system, and there I am today. So with the initial phase, we have done the basic survey and all, and as you are already learning related to the global navigation satellite system since 2 3 days. So basically, we know that our system or our life is more or less associated with the navigation information, maybe directly or indirectly. And sometimes, as we know, we go to unknown place. Nowadays we don't need to ask anyone where I should go, what road I should follow, because navigation providing us a very superb services that now we even don't rely the human beings, but we rely more on GPS or GNSS signals, right? So that is what the trust this particular field have gained during the past few years, which is very rapid growth in the same field, as many countries of the world are running in the same race to become much more experienced in the GNSS system, where India is also playing its biggest role, providing the NAVIC as one of the GNSS regional navigation satellite system to us. And if I talk about the application, normally if anybody asks that what are the navigation application we are talking about, so normally we talk about just traveling from one location to the other. But if we look at it a broad view, then GNSS applications are very very wide, and they are just like the blood in our body. They have been associated to the many applications like non-military applications. Basic is surveying and mapping. There are many things which are going on with the surveying and the mapping services too. Other, we already know as a commercial applications, they are in agriculture, transportation, unmanned vehicles, machine control, marine navigation, other industries, like, where many things are to be observed in terms of time as well as the position. So only personal navigation is not the major application, but there are many other transportation or many other applications where GNS is playing a very, very big role. Correct. And there are several others, like in terms of consumer application, if I talk, then the vehicle navigation, mobile communication, entertainment, athletes, we are talking about the driverless car and all. So in that, you may think that what is the role of a navigation, that the direction, the control of the position of a car is required in a driverless application. So if we see that there are variety of applications. Now, in these applications, there are possibility that the acceptance of the accuracy or the precision is different. If I talk about, as in general, image processing related to the medical. So in that, a single cell cannot be avoided. That minute level of information is very much important to diagnose a patient or treat a patient. But in that case, if I am searching for a theater or any particular location, then I won't require to go with that much of precision, because I am able to see that physically into it. But cells in a biomedical application are very much crucial. Similarly, with the navigation too, or positioning too, we have different kinds of expectations in terms of the position accuracy. Correct? And we started working related to basically in terms of interference and the effect that what the signal is going to have typically on NAVIC, right? While we are dealing with the in general GNSS system. So I would be covering partially thing that why GNSS error is so important to discuss, right? So as it is one of the weakness of GNSS is the inability of receivers to determine their accurate position from compromised satellite signals. So the biggest challenge we face from the satellite services is the compromised satellite signals. Now, what does it mean, a compromised satellite signals? It is the signal which is not purely received from the sky, but it is getting affected with the many parameters, and it is a diluted signal we are receiving. It's something that the water we get from the rain, which is directly coming from the sky, is pure compared to the one we get it from our tap waters, right? It is traveling through so many things, and it is getting added so many particles and all that part. So that way, even the same thing is happening with the satellite signals. We are not able to get the pure signal, but we are able to receive compromised satellite signal. So this uncertainty may be due to the lack of direct line of sight between satellite and receiver. We know that with the congested area of our lifestyle, our surroundings, we are not able to receive the direct satellite signal all the time. So definitely we need to rely on the signals which are getting reflected or refracted, or maybe a non-line of sight signals. Or the satellite may be low on horizon, increasing the risk of multipath errors and of signal attenuation due to propagation through atmosphere. So there are many things which are playing a very big role in the positioning part or the accuracy part of the satellite signal data that we receive. So this reception problem is basically prevalent around the world, but particularly in the big cities like urban canyons and all. Okay, normally, even if I talk about my department, we are having so many buildings, so somewhere we are not able to get the signal inside the building or near to the campus sometimes. So there are certain areas where we are not able to get the signal very easily. It is visible. So it is an open challenge, and there are many people, many researchers who are working to get that thing solved and get it to better positioning. Correct? Yeah. So there are several alternatives come close to solving this reception problem. But most promising solution is we need to understand what is the GNSS error sources are. Because if we know the sources, if we know the error sources who are playing a big role, there are many features or many quantities which plays a role, but we need to focus on those parameters we are playing a big role in a sense. They are more responsible for creating error at a large scale. So we need to understand these error, and according to that, the overall GNSS constellation or solution can be provided to us. Okay, so even we need to see that what kind of interference sources are there, which even affect the signal positioning at the end. So thorough constellation and error source examination, of course, concludes a receiver architecture strategy that accepts multi-band and multi-constellation signals. So let's dive into this. Okay, so we know that GNSS contains multiple regional and global satellite constellations, all of which orbit around the Earth. There are many who are available, but still we are facing the problem. So this problem is not so simple to handle. There are many options, many expectations, and many varieties of solutions available. So single global constellation provides the desired coverage with a group of 20 to 30 satellites. So let's talk about GNSS error sources. Okay, so at a large, if I talk about, so it basically deals with the major component of error sources are clock related errors, signal propagation errors, and system errors. Now, all errors are not so simple or systematic. There are non-systematic errors, and other than that, all errors are not happening at the same time. Every time, the type of error may gets vary. There are variety of possibility in terms of the intensity of an error to occur into the GNS, into the satellite signals, right? As if we see, if the many things are varying in nature, now in that case, we may understand that how difficult to model such kind of error budget, or you can say error solution model. Because suppose we have two equations and two unknowns, we are able to solve it very easily, very easily. But in that case, if we have five variables, five equations, but all are varying in that nature, right? And we don't know, there is no direct relation among all these errors too. So how to solve that? So people have started working on that individual group of error sources and try to give the best solution to that, that how we can overcome at least up to certain extent to improve the positioning. Correct? So in clock related errors, we have satellite clock errors, receiver clock errors, inter-system biases. In signal propagation errors, if I talk about, it deals with ionospheric error, tropospheric error, and multipath errors. While system errors may be satellite orbital errors, noise at the receiver or hardware, what we are dealing with. And interferences are by default, and interference are something which is totally unexpected. These are the things which are associated, which are actually existing. Ionosphere by default exists, troposphere by default exists. Similarly, multipath is also exist. Why? Because the surroundings are there. Okay. Similarly, clock errors or system errors. We are using hardware, so hardware receiver noise would be there. Orbits are, of course, orbital errors are of course there because satellites are in space and they are orbiting around the Earth. So these are the errors which we can easily assume that they are by default available. But if I talk about interference, they are totally a different kinds of situation which acts unexpectedly, okay, unknowingly. So it's very difficult to identify them too. So we'll talk related to that also little later. Let me go through this first. Okay, so this you might have seen maybe in the previous sessions what you have understood. So if the major amount of error that these major sources are giving, if I talk about satellite clocks, orbital errors, ionosphere, troposphere, receiver, and multipath, right? So multipath, sorry, it's missing, it is 0.11 meter actually. Okay, so and these errors are basically cumulative. So if I just categorize them in the other way in terms of satellite related errors, so it can be of gravitational, non-gravitational, and other systems. Overall, it can result in orbital error. Now, orbital error, what we understand by that while the satellite is moving into the orbit due to the drags, due to the solar radiation, solar winds, magnetic fields, gravitational fields of different planets, it is having some jerkiness onto that, or the orientation or the direction of the satellite may get little bit changed, but that little word for us is very much higher in the GNSS or the satellite or the space research, as in terms of outcome as a position accuracy. So little change, little drag into the orbital path definitely results in a very, very high error at the Earth surface. If I talk about like ionospheric, tropospheric, refraction, multipath, they deals with the signal delays. So if the delay is higher beyond certain limit, then the correlation part doesn't come. We cannot track the particular satellite, and at the end, if we are not able to get those signals, we are not able to get the position too. Right? There are special relativity in terms of increasing the received frequency, the variation into the frequency phase, and all that. That is also in terms of Doppler, it affects, and again, it challenges the position accuracy. If I talk about receiver related, then antenna, what you are using, what is the variation, the angle, the beam, the sensitivity, right? The clock bias, all these are going to affect or results in some error observed in the PRN. So a GNSS receiver calculates the position based on data received from satellites. So however, there are many sources of errors that is left uncorrelated cause the position calculation be inaccurate. So this is the position accuracy, right? So something which is, this is the actual position, and this is what we are getting, computed position. So this is what the error we are getting. Now here on the picture side, if we see, it seems very less. Arey, yahan bhi to hai. It's simple to switch to this. No, but that is not possible at all. Let me see some laser pointer. Yeah. So this is my actual position, and this is what the computed one. So you can see this is what the error, which may be caused by the receiver time inaccuracy. So the thing, if we deal with the errors, we need to identify first the error. So the detection of error is important, correct? So detecting position error may result in to get the PRN from the different satellites. Okay, so the pseudo-range 2 satellites, suppose A, B, and C are not intersecting because of receiver time accuracy, if they are not synchronized correctly. So here what will happen, that this is going to give a computed position, right, without any correction. This is what the expected one, and this is what we are getting. Now what we know that if you are able to model the errors which are happening, maybe in terms of one as a synchronization in time, then we may improve the position. So every correction to the errors add on to the or move towards the precision in terms of positioning. And at the end, if we are able to handle that, we can have the converged position, or we may say improved position, where we want to be in terms of accuracy. Okay, so let's talk about in little detail about the satellite related errors. So if I talk about the clock errors, so satellite errors include ephemeride and clock errors. And these satellite errors are very, very small, but we know that a 10 nanoseconds of clock error results in what? 3 meter of position error. One may say that why 3 meter is important. So as I said, that navigation or GNSS is associated with many applications, right? So maybe a driverless car. So here in a driverless car, if a 3 meter of position error is happening, can you imagine the result, what it is going to give? There may be many lives at risk who are traveling in the driverless car, right? Many congestion, much of the accidents, and it costs very, very much high. So it depends that where you are locating that, where you are using that, okay? The clock on the satellite is monitored by GNSS ground control system and compared to the even more accurate clock used in the ground control system. So in the downlink data, the satellite provides the user with an estimate of its clock offset. So here, the estimate has an accuracy of about plus or 2 meters. Although the accuracy can vary, of course, between different GNSS systems. So we cannot say that if, okay, a generalized table I showed that these are the possible range of errors, what the different, error sources are going to give, but they even vary with respect to the different GNSS systems. Okay, so it is not a generalized value, it is a range we can say. So it basically falls in plus or minus 2 meters. Maybe GPS is giving some else, Navic is giving some else, GLONASS is giving something else, but they are majorly falls within this range. The atomic clock in the GNSS satellites are very accurate, but they do drift a small amount. So small inaccuracy in the satellite clock results in a significant error in the position calculated by the receiver, and this needs compensation. So we need to see that what are the compensation we can provide to handle these errors. That I'll show a little later. Let me talk about the orbit errors. So we know that satellite travels in a very precise, well-known orbits. Now, we are, of course, knowing that the accuracy of orbits are how much important is it. If a satellite is out of its orbit or started going out of its orbit, it is like a mission is going to fail, right? Because it is changing its orbit. So orbit maintenance is even a very, very big issue. And natural things in the space nobody can control. So whatever the effect they are going to give it on or affect the satellite movement or rotation to with respect to the Earth is totally unpredictable, right? So that's why we need to monitor these errors very, very frequently. So, however, like the satellite clock, the orbits do vary a small amount. This error is directly linked with the Earth's rotation rate. Okay. So even we know that we are placing satellites into multiple kinds of orbits, maybe elliptical, maybe inclined, maybe geosynchronous, geostationary, correct? So most probably, whenever we talk about GNSS error or something, we by default consider that the satellites are in geostationary, right? It doesn't mean, because these can be depending on, as I said, these orbit errors, depending on the type of orbit even you are using. According to that, it impact as an error in terms of drift is going to be very, very different. So suppose a 70 to 90 milliseconds of time for a GPS signal to reach to the Earth station. Now, within this, there is some angular motion is happening, right? And that may be up to 7 into 10 raised to 6 radians, but these results in 10 to 20 meter of range computation. So the error goes really very high if these things are not being maintained or corrected. If we know the error, if we know the source, we can definitely go for the correction. And that correction is helping us today even to work with GNSS with a very good accuracy and positional accuracy. So when the satellite orbit changes, the ground control system sends this correction to the satellite and satellite ephemeris is updated. So even with the corrections from the GNSS ground control system, there are still small errors in the orbit that can result up to plus or minus 2.5 meters of position error. Yani, if you are adding the corrections, still the errors are going on. They are there. I mean, once the error correction is done, it's not like that it is over, because it is a continuous monitoring. What time the atmosphere is getting changed, what time some storm is storm is coming. So all these are totally unpredictable. So in that situation, we can't take chance. Why we can't take chance? Because we are much more rely nowadays in technology and its accuracy, right? I'm continuing with the driverless car example, that if suddenly some solar storm is appearing, and in that case the delay with respect to the ionosphere is little bit changed, so it is going to affect the my position, right? So here the corrections are very, very much important. Detection, corrections, and mitigations are very much important. So that's why these orbital errors are also very, very much important. So if I want to compensate, if I want to handle these clock errors or orbit errors, so I can go with the utilization of SBUS or PPP or differential GNSS or RTK. So all these are different options which are already available, right? You might have heard some of them, and you might going to heard these in the future sessions of this workshop. But the idea here is that all are behaving differently, all are having their own expectations at how to implement, and the hardware requirement and all that stuff are again with respect to a kind of solution one is working with. Okay, if I talk about receiver noise, so it is considered as a random measurement noise. Why? Because it has some code delay and the carrier phase measurements which are affected by the receiver noise, and that's why it is considered as a random measurement noise. As it depends on what? Receiver is a hardware and a software combination part, right? So what level of accurate hardware one is utilizing, the overall effect is also going to be added into it. So as I mentioned earlier too, that there is no generalized value for that. It depends on the situation and the and the infrastructure, what a person is utilizing. And as there are systematic and non-systematic errors, so we cannot give a particular statement that these kinds of error are going to be happen every time, because it depends on antenna, type of antenna, right? Then amplifiers, then cables, and also there are many other thermal noise and all that part also associated with the hardware quality which is being utilized into that. So other than that, the interference from the other GNSS signal is also included in this random measurement noise, because what kind of surrounding is available where the receiver is installed, as per that these interference kind of RFI is going to be exist. So that is situational base effect. So for an example, if you have a PRN code arriving from GPS satellite and there is a replica what we generate at the GPS receiver, so there is a time delay of certain seconds, right? So this give you the computation of your distance and all. But here, if this computation is not within the time frame or it is beyond certain delay, then it is going to result in a wrong position calculation. Other satellite related errors, if I talk about, one of them is cycle slip in carrier phase observable, where cycle slip is a sudden jump in the carrier phase. This discontinuity has to be estimated and resolved quickly and reliably in order to obtain accurate phase advance measurements, especially in a navigation application, because we cannot say that this is occurring all the time. So that's why it is considered as some other kind of related errors where the judgment of what range of error it can give, it is not kind of generalized, but this sort of emergencies can also happen in the error calculation, position calculation. So this is also to be considered in, taken care of while GNSS receiver is being placed or installed. Another is satellite code offset. So differential code bias is the offset that will occur between pseudo range measurements at L1 to L5. So these are also playing a role while observing the errors, because there are many small things which are adding error to this, but majorly we are focusing on the players who are giving more amount of errors, which are very much visible and generally available. Another the category that we need to discuss is about GNSS errors is signal propagation related. Okay, so we know that as the signal is coming from the different phase of atmosphere, it has to be considered in the atmospheric delays, because frequency is the part which behaves differently with the different layers of atmosphere. So here, with the GNSS point of view, there are two major contributions of the atmosphere. One is the natural atmospheric delay, which is composed of hydrostatic components like N2, O2, CO2, trace gases, part of the water vapor contributions, and water vapor component. And another is the ionospheric delay. The first one is considered as a tropospheric delay, and the second one is ionospheric delay. So this ionospheric delay component is due to free electrons, and this we cannot control. This component is frequency dependent. You just focus here. Your ionospheric delay is frequency dependent. So as the range or the frequency is getting changed from L1 to L5, L1 to L2, right, they are going to have variation into it. So this can be estimated from the dual frequency measurements. Okay, so yeah. The lower atmosphere is non-dispersive. If I say the neutral one is and the ionosphere, both are, one of them is dispersive and another is non-dispersive, right? So troposphere, which comes first from the Earth and then the ionosphere. So this lower atmosphere means the troposphere layer is non-dispersive below 30 gigahertz. So all GNSS signal, regardless of frequency, are slowed equally. Okay, so troposphere is not frequency dependent, but ionosphere is frequency dependent. So this particular feature of atmospheric layer is also playing a role while they are generating the error or the delay into the satellite signal. Okay, so there are fundamental limitations on positioning accuracy using GNSS technique, and these limitations are defined by error budget. You might have seen this error budget, but just I'm keeping this in front of you so you may relate it. So major thing, if I want to say, see, delay is going to be there because signal is traveling, correct? Speed of light is already there, and R is the geometric range to the satellite. Now, major thing, we need to concentrate on this part, right? It is the ionospheric and tropospheric signal delays, multipath delays, and receiver noise. These are the major thing. If you see, they are basically utilized while they are going for the GNSS error budget calculations, right? Okay, so let's talk about ionospheric delay. So the picture shows that you have actually a line of sight, but if you see the blue color thing, it is getting bent. Okay, and these are nothing but the ionosphere small layers. The overall ionosphere is divided into the small layers, but we don't deal with them in so much of depth. But we generalize deal with the two major, the part of ionospheric layer. So the ionosphere is the layer of atmosphere between 80 kilometers to 600 kilometers above the Earth. This layer contains electrically charged particles called ions. So these ions relay the satellite signal and can cause a significant amount of satellite position error, which is typically plus or minus 5 meters. Man, plus or minus 5 meters is a huge error what ionospheric layer is giving. Okay, it's a high, it can rate to the high related to the ionospheric activity, solar activity near in the atmosphere, right? So the major contribution of ionospheric delay is banding of the GNSS signal. Now, as the band is there, the distance that the signal travels gets increases, right? Its speed is getting affected. Okay, and as it is frequency dependent, so different frequency behaves differently as well. So the banding is also getting changed or vary with respect to the frequency and the speed of the signal too. So this is just to give you idea that these are, some drags are happening. So these basically affect the signal travel through the atmosphere. So ionospheric delay varies with solar activity, time of year, season, time of day, and location. So we cannot give a generalized solution for the ionospheric delay, because the atmosphere what we face at the SVNIT Surat, at the Burwan, you might not be seeing the same atmosphere or same ionospheric effect, right? So with respect to the location, with respect to the time of the year, of the week, of the day, or the seasons, you can see the variation of the features available or associated with the ionospheric delay, right? And all are contributing to the source of a major source of error generation in the GNSS signal, which is ranging plus or minus 5 meters, right? So this picture or this, are you able to see this movement? If anybody can respond to me. Are you able to see this movement?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you so much for your
Visible.
response. Yeah,
Moving.
perfect. Yeah, so see this. So this is just for one particular time, which have been taken on 5th September 2006. So the variation which is across the globe is changing with respect to the position at the different area of the globe. Correct. Now, if you see and observe similar kind of thing on a daily basis, then this variation is continuously changing. If something which is continuously changing, how to predict it, how to make it, make it so accurate to approximate that we can apply to the correction model so that we can improve or we can give a continuous accuracy in terms of position. Right, so this makes it very difficult to predict how much ionospheric delay is impacting the calculated position. Ionospheric delay also varies based on the radio frequency of the signal passing through the ionosphere. So that is also playing a very, very big role into this. So this is another visualization of ionospheric storm in a quiet ionosphere. You can see the intensity which is vary from blue to red color in the left and the right figure both, right? So at certain kinds of events, when some ionospheric storm is existing compared to the quiet ionosphere area, so the variation here is too much high, and that ionospheric concentration is getting changed, and that is affecting the signal travel via atmosphere. So such kind of studies are even very much important if one wants to work on a very precise level of positioning path. That's why these error study or error observation is very, very important in the GNSS field. Okay, so GNSS receivers that can receive more than one GNSS signal, L1 and L2, for example, can use this to their advantage, in a sense that we can compare the measurements for L1 to the measurements for L2. And the receiver can determine the amount of ionospheric delay and remove this error from the calculated position. Here you may ask that that we have discussed that the frequency variation is ionosphere is a frequency dependent entity, and according to that the delay is going to be there. But if suppose we are applying some differential GNSS where the baseline is nearer to each other, right, not varying much, and L1 and L2 are not having much of the wide variation, then approximation can be applied. कि L1 में इतना error आया, L2 में इतना error आया. Now we can see that what level of error is there, and that we can utilize to correct it. See, accurate, it won't give you the exact value, but for the approximation even that value or that measurement is required. So for receivers that can only track a single GNSS frequency, ionospheric models are used to reduce ionospheric delay errors. So if we are having dual frequency measurements, then ionospheric delay calculation is absolutely fine, because we are having the reference of two different frequencies, which as a logic we can apply, and we can identify what could be the error and we can correct it. But there are many applications where the single receivers are utilized with the single frequency. We don't have every time multi-frequency, multi-constellation receivers installed in different kinds of applications. So what about those situations? Because these are the situations where positioning is required, but ionosphere signal or ionospheric error is also existing. So it has to have some ionospheric models which help to reduce that ionospheric delay errors, so that up to a certain level the positioning can be given. So due to the varying nature of these ionospheric delay, models are not as effective as using multiple frequency at removing ionospheric delay. Of course, the performance analysis, if you compare with the single frequency receiver with respect to multi-frequency receiver, the ionospheric correction would be much more better in the multi-frequency situations compared to single frequency. Because in single frequency, we are going to use some specified mathematical models, putting the values, giving some approximate error correction, and that is what we can serve. But the level of accuracy or the correction that simple single frequency receiver will give is at the compromised value only. It cannot be so accurate, or it cannot be utilized all the time. So that's why there are possibility to apply multiple frequencies as well. So ionospheric conditions are very similar within a local area. So somewhere some assumptions are required, right? Because every time a dynamic situation comes, dynamic parameter variations come, so every change we cannot reflect in the machines. Okay, and I guess that limitation you people also understand, that whatever even the variation happening in our daily life, that we cannot reflect to every task. We have to have certain compromise assumptions that, okay, if this is the thing, this is going to happen. So here also, what we assume to get the better answer to the delay corrections, that we consider that the ionospheric conditions are very similar within a local area. So if I move on to the previous, just this moving area, here you can see a part of yellow or a part of red. Here we see it's very few of the blocks on it. But if we exactly project that onto suppose Indian region, then we can see certain area is there, local area is there, which is almost having the similar ionospheric effect. Okay, so that is what I wanted to convey. So ionospheric conditions are very similar within a local area. So the base station and the rover receivers experience very similar delay. These allows differential GNS and RTK systems to compensate for ionospheric delay, because some assumptions are helpful to execute something. If we deals with the real-time situations to handle, and according to that, if we apply, then sorry, we are not able to get any solution to that. So in that case, it is required to have certain assumptions that ionospheric remains almost not, we can say, very much similar in a local certain regions. Of course, that depends on the geographical area, but on an average, in that particular geographical area, for a smaller area, it can be considered to be a similar value. Now, if I talk about the tropospheric delay, so the troposphere is the layer of atmosphere which is closest to the surface of the Earth. It is not a frequency dependent component. The variation in the tropospheric delay are caused by changing the humidity, temperature, and atmospheric pressure in the troposphere. So basically, as we see that ionosphere deals with the ionospheric concentration, ion concentration into that atmospheric layer. Similarly, troposphere, which is near to the Earth, is also having certain components like humidity, temperature, atmospheric pressure. These are also the parameters which are affecting the resultant signal, while calculating the position. So since these tropospheric conditions are very similar within a local area, the base station and the rover receivers experience very similar tropospheric delay. But they are also required to calculate. So what are the major components inside the troposphere? They are basically two components, dry and wet. So dry component contributes 80 to 90% of the delay, while wet part, which contributes 10 to 20% of the delay. So this allows differential GNSS or RTK systems to compensate for the tropospheric delay. Okay, if I see, we need to have certain models which estimate the amount of error which is generated by the tropospheric delay. So this is one overall study that what we have done, we are doing so. So just to give you the idea that if you see, there are like tropospheric model is compromised with the zenith delay and the slant delay, hydrostatic delay and the wet delay. And all these are having different models, right? These different models for identifying the tropospheric delay model in terms of mapping function and the model, we can apply variety of combination of this model, and we can identify which can gives the better approximation or estimation for the tropospheric delay, right? So Sastemonian is there, Hopefeld is there, IFARIS is there, MOPS is there, I mean many, and similarly there are certain mapping functions are there. So the combination of that with respect to wet delay and the dry delay, you can combine and you can even identify for your study that which one gives the better result. And here also one can extend the work in terms of, if the database is available, one can apply artificial intelligence to identify which model is giving better result with respect to the time too. Okay, so moving towards the another error source, that is multipath. Okay, till time, any doubts, or are you with me in this talk?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so multipath. If I talk multipath is something which is very vague to answer, because multipath depends on the location of a receiver, where it is located, because it is getting the signal which are reflected from the surroundings or the area where the receiver is located. So in a sense, multipath occurs when a GNSS signal is reflected off an object, such as the wall of building or any antenna. Now, because of this reflected signal, what will happen that the signal traveling path is increased, and that increases the delay. Now, in a normal wireless communication, multipath is basically advantageous, so that the signal which is coming from the multiple path, which is sensed by the receiver, is helpful to be in the coverage of the signal. But here in satellite domain, if we talk about multipath, then it is actually adding the error to it, because we are dealing more towards line of sight component or line of sight communication rather than the non-line of sight communication. But if we talk about in mobile communication or basic terrestrial communication, it deals with non-line of sight situations rather than being in line of sight, because line of sight all the time is not possible. So there, in such fields, multipath is advantageous, but here it is going to get add error. So this delayed signal can cause the receiver to calculate an incorrect position. I mean, not exactly if we just look at the multipath, but as one of the entity of being error source, multipath definitely affects the position calculation. The range measurement error due to multipath depends upon the strength of the reflected signal and the delay between the direct and the reflected signals. So the effect is greater for pseudo range measurement in meters than the phase measurement in centimeter or mm, right, millimeter. So the way the multipath is affecting, if I'm not wrong, or you might have seen that there are the antennas, there are the applications where the antenna by default created to handle these multipath. Because where the antenna is located, whether it is on a reflective surface, where because every time it is not possible to put a receiver in such a at such a location where there is no reflection happening. There are reflections are going to happen. Maybe it is from water, maybe it is from the land, whether it is from a surrounding metal or where it is located. So the signal is going to get affected. So it can affect in terms of pseudo range measurement or in terms of phase measurement. Okay, so this is what a picture basically indicates. You have these reflected signals, right? So this is non-visible satellite signal with large propagation delay. So you can see the path that particular signal is taking to reach instead of coming directly to it. So this is getting delayed. Now, as we know that 4 satellites are required to have the position. So here, these are the major visible satellite: visible, visible, non-visible, non-visible. Why? Because it is not directly visible. So here the signal is getting reflected and diffracted from the buildings or the surroundings. And according to that, the minimum 4 out of 4 satellite, if 2 are visible and 2 are giving non-line of sight signal, then you can assume that what level of accuracy this position calculation would give. Correct. So if we are standing between 2 tall buildings, and if you are trying to see that how many satellites are visible, there is the situation where multipath plays a very important role in the positioning. On the open sky, it is absolutely okay. Open ground, it is absolutely okay. You are getting the direct signals. But what about the situation where we are already living, where the multiple buildings are surrounded us, okay, or the satellites are not being visible? We do have multiple constellations available in space, but still we are facing this issue of visibility of satellite. So the multipath signal will always arrive after the direct path signal because it must travel a longer path. Of course, weaker than the direct path signal because it is taking a longer path to come to the receiver. And if the delay of the multipath is less than 2 PR and code chip lengths, the internally generated receiver signal will partially correlate with it. But if it is beyond that, it is not possible to consider that. Okay. So the simplest way to reduce multipath errors is to place the GNSS antenna in a location that is away from the reflective surface. When this is not possible, the GNSS receiver and antenna must deal with the multipath signals. There is no other option. So long delay multipath errors are typically handled by the GNSS receiver, while short delay multipath errors are handled by the GNSS antenna. Okay, so here I'll just give you some glimpse of the work what we have done. I hope I'm able to. Yeah, so one study, this study is being done by one of my PG student, the multipath analysis, and in that we try to get some data. For multipath detection, we applied 3 different algorithms, that is serial search acquisition method, parallel frequency space search acquisition method, and parallel code phase search acquisition method. These are the major or most famous methods which are utilized to detect the multipath, right? So what basically we did, that this is the actual results which were there in one of the paper, where PCPS was giving a high complexity but the least repetition, while the other serial search and PFSs are medium and having quite good repetition in identifying the same. So we had a study to identify that mitigation, if you want to apply mitigation in a sense that how we can reduce the effect of multipath onto the NAVIC signal, which we have the data what we have noted in the SVNIT campus itself. There are basically different correlator based multipath mitigation techniques. We can apply, go for the different combinations. Okay, early late slope techniques is very much known, which is utilized for multipath elimination techniques. And here we need to go for the pseudo range correction, which is also called the tracking error, using the intersection point. So this particular slope is the method overall, which gives you the error function, that how much it is shifted from your acquired or expected values. So we try to get that. We had a few database which is collected. Now direct multipath we cannot identify. Why? Because multipath basically gives a composite signal of the received data, right? So individual multipath cannot be handled, but what we can do is we can, make a part of the received signal in terms of the ionosphere, troposphere, and the multipath. Okay, so here what we did is we took the different database in terms of the open sky near to the sea level, and in the campus where the very big buildings and the particular trees and all that stuff are available. And other than that, we took a reference data which was at the night time. Now, as we have studied till that, troposphere error is 0. Plus or minus 0.5 meters. Troposphere ionosphere errors are plus or minus 5 meters, right? And multipath is of course plus or minus 1 meters. Now, in receiver noise and all, they are handled in plus or minus 0.5 meter of error. So what we assume is we took the night data as a reference data where ionospheric error are almost nil, because at night time ionospheric ions doesn't exist in a sense that its effect is almost negligible. So only the troposphere, which is giving plus or minus 5, and receiver noise would be existing with multipath. So whatever data we are getting at the night is majorly having the multipath as one of the major factor to understand. We applied different algorithms onto this particular database, and we studied that how it look like, right? So yeah. We applied these PFSS and PCPS algorithms to study the same, and we see that comparison in terms of PFSS and PCPS, that PCPS was giving, of course, a better result. And it is mandatory that when the incoming signal is multiplied with the local generated PRN code, the generated code has to be perfectly aligned, which was happening with the PCPS rather than PFSS. So PCPS we carried forward for further analysis. These are the other PRNs comparison, and we can definitely see that how the peaks are appearing with PFSS compared to PCPS. Okay. Okay. After that, we have gone with the ELS multipath mitigation method, and we identify that how much error we are able to see. It was just a trial because we were not having such kind of antenna which was able to give us the multipath removal part. So multipath was one of the factor which were being observed in the received data. So here the IF data samples collected using NAVIC receiver, L5 band was utilized. PCPS method is implemented for multipath detection, and also compared the results of each data taken in day and night time. So we do apply Gaussian and the linear filter to remove the noise from both the delay, night, and other data, so we can understand that how ELS technique would give us the accuracy. So after applying the multipath detection on PRN, different PRN, we could able to see that, and we applied for the different integration period of 1 millisecond to 4 millisecond in the variety, and we could able to see that we are able to identify that correlation peaks in certain region, while in the smaller region it was not possible. Okay, so yeah, these are the results. So here the multipath effect is observed more in the database 4, which was in the campus. Compared to the bigger buildings and the trees, here the data is collected in the region where the more trees and the buildings are present, which give rise to more multipath components, and also due to the daytime ionospheric effect was also there. So there was a quite good difference we could able to observe. Okay, so these are the thing that how we identify the Doppler, code phase and Doppler shift. So we can see that certain area where the Doppler shift indicates the amount of original signal affected by the multipath components as there is the movement in the satellite. So if the Doppler shift is more, then multipath is more. So the Doppler shift is required to be observed. So it is observed that the Doppler shift is highest for the PRN7 in all the types of data collected, and lowest for the PRN3. So this is the observation for one station only. This can be carried forward for the other two. And according to that, we identify that how it is identified. We have calculated alpha mean. Here, the signal with more error components has less alpha mean value and more noise flow. So among all the data, set 4 at PRN7 has the highest noise flow and the lower alpha mean value, as the multipath component is more as compared to with data 2, 3, 4, and the other. So at the end, this is how the filtration can be applied so that we can reduce the noise effect and the variation. Yeah, so we do have the comparison in terms of the Gaussian and the Wiener filter. We identified with respect to the slope ELS method, and we saw that how improvement can be done with respect to the different data sets. So yeah, you can see here with this, the right hand side, you can see the quite good difference between the two kinds of data set 1 and data set 4. So yeah, so it is concluded that the Wiener filter is able to remove the error components, but it is not able to remove it precisely as the Gaussian filter. So one can utilize Gaussian filter compared to Wiener filter in this multipath situation. And similarly, the other with filter, without filter, we could able to see these are the basically tracking errors which are being calculated. I hope you can see the below values tracking errors with respect to without filter and with filter. So this much tracking error we could able to reduce in such database. Okay, so yeah, so the tracking error is more for the data which is directly fed to the multipath mitigation block after acquisition, but the tracking error is reduced for the data which is first passed through the Gaussian filter and then the multipath mitigation block. So overall, we could able to reduce the error with respect to this multipath typical as a component with a focused objective. But as it was even observed that with the different geographical areas, of course, this effect of multipath is getting quite varied. Okay, so that was one thing what my student did, and she completed her post-graduation. Okay, so due to the additional technology required to deal with multipath signals, high-end GNSS receivers and antenna tend to be better for rejecting multipath errors. So if one don't want to add on the correction part into the receiver, one can go with the advanced level of receivers where this can be easily handled, or a good choke ring antennas and all, which basically helps in the multipath reduction. So if you are keeping your receiver in such area where large buildings or possibility of higher multipath is there, I suggest one should use the choke ring antenna, which helps to avoid at least that error occurrence into the received signal. Okay, now we are moving towards the GNSS interference, which is very close to my heart, related to the NAVIC. We have done very good work, and my PhD students have completed them, and they've actually contributed very well into this particular research, and they are actually a part of this workshop too, Dr. Darshana and Dr. Mehul. Okay, so yeah, what is radio frequency interference? As I said, till time, whatever the errors we have seen, they are actually existing. Okay, and they can be modeled, either they can be handled with respect to differential GNSS or RTK, because atmospheric errors are able to see approximate and all. But now if we're talking related to the interference, where radio frequency interference is considered, they have many things which can generate such kind of interference, right? So it can be electromagnetic interference, radio frequency interference, right? So there is no way to cover every source of interference in one go. We have variety of possibilities existing surrounded to the receiver. So nearly anything that uses electricity can produce RFI, and even some things that don't. So in a sense, here this don't, why it is highlighted in different manner, because we can go with the interference even at the category level in terms of interference as intentional and unintentional. Let's have a look on that. So in a major way, if I go with the classification of interference, so the things in the natural world that causes the emission of electromagnetic energy through various means. So natural radiators don't usually extend above low frequencies, but there are exceptions. Interference generated by man-made technology creates artificial interference. So this is what we cannot predict, because artificial interference may be intentional or unintentional. We don't know where they are available till we scan it or we detect it. Okay, but if I talk about ionosphere interference or ionosphere error, it is by default existing. If I trace it or not, it is existing. Troposphere, it is existing. correct? So clock, it is of course existing because these are the by default existing parameters which are going to there. So overall, if I go with the classification of interference, they can be majorly classified as natural and artificial interference. In natural, we have already discussed majorly of this thing in terms of multipath, in terms of propagation errors, maybe ionospheric errors or tropospheric errors. In terms of clock, like receiver clock error, satellite orbit, cycle slip, satellite position in terms of satellite orbital error, geometrical order, right? And in artificial category, if I talk about, it majorly divided in intentional and unintentional. In intentional, jamming and spoofing. And unintentional, there are the other standards or technologies which are utilizing frequencies near to the frequency ranges of satellite communication, but there are very less. Okay, so over the end, what we are dealing that these are the applications which are having their own transmission and reception, and these creates electromagnetic interference, radio frequency interference, which affects the satellite signals in positioning. Okay, so what are the effect of interference if I talk about? So it can have these interference can increase the cycle slips in the phase measurement. Now that we have already discussed, right, related to the cycle slip and phase measurement. What can happen over there? Okay, it can range into 10 to 20 meter of variations even. Loss of receiver tracking. If the signal is totally blocked, or you can say loss of lock had happened, or the signal is jammed or spoofed. Basically in jam, the loss receiver cannot receive the signal. So if the receiver is not able to receive the signal, we will in a lost situation. We don't have our position. We can't navigate. So these are the unexpected situation which is happening or which had happened in the past too and created a lot many issues. It can increase of noise on the pseudo range measurement also, and it can decrease of measured signal strength too in terms of spoofing and jamming and all. So these are a very serious impact, or you can say existing threat to the GNSS signal. Yeah. Hello. I'm so sorry.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, it's audible.
Yeah. So sorry. Let's share the screen again. Just give me a minute. I hope you are able to see this, right?
It's coming.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. So yeah, I was talking about the interference part. Okay. So let me continue with this. How the interference is affecting the positioning. These are the like loss of receiver tracking, increase of cycle slips, in phase measurement, increase of noise on the pseudo range measurement, decrease of measured signal strength. These are the major parameters which are affecting the signal quality and the positioning. So if I talk about the artificial interference, then these interference is generated by a malicious operator is known as intentional interference. The name itself it suggests that intentionally it is trying to affect the signal which is being received by the receiver, and it is trying to misguide the receiver so that the intended position won't be achieved by the receiver. It can divert to something else for malicious action. If I talk about unintentional interference, so in unintentional interference, they are basically caused by the radio waves which are available near to the receiver and some of the other type of electronic or electrical equipment usage. So here we can say the DME or radar. These are the major components which can affect the satellite signals unintentionally. So they are categorized under unintentional situation. So unintentional situations are there which are which can be easily handled, or it is not so much affecting the positioning part. Intentional is something which is meant to make it bad. Okay, so if I talk about the intentional interference, so intentional interference is basically, as I mentioned, that spoofing and the jamming are the major component to that. Right? So spoofing signals, which are basically fake signals, fake navigation signals that are especially designed to mimic the trustworthy navigation signal. It's something that suppose you are traveling to somewhere on the GPS based on navigation only, there is only a jungle area near to you, and there is no person to whom you basically ask that whether the road what I have selected is correct or not. Now in that case, we normally rely on GPS signal or GNSS signal what we are receiving on our phone. Now here, whatever the signal is coming, are we ever doubt on that? No. Why? Because we are blindly trusting them. Now here, this may happen that the spoofing is such a thing that it just replicate a similar kind of navigation, and it may divert you to some other road. So here happen of time of the special of the VIP persons or be monitored in such a way. Okay, guys, just give me a minute. So I need to connect to my office again. Hello, is it visible?
Yes, visible now.
Okay. So sorry. Okay. Yeah, fine. So yeah, intentional and unintentional are something which was not being studied for the NAVIC when we have started. So it was totally a new field what we have chosen for. So we thought in terms of signal processing to enter into the navigation part, and where we stand today, that the spoofing and the jamming are the situation where it was required to have study, because if you talk about GPS or any other navigation systems where such threats are existing, and they basically jam certain kinds of vehicles or signals so that they can misguide the other side, right? So it actually helpful in the war conditions as well, or some VVIP persons who are visiting the India or going outside the India or somewhere like that, right? So spoofing is something which is creating a fake signal, fake navigation signal, and it just misguide the vehicle to travel. While the jamming is something that it act on intentionally directing your electromagnetic energy towards a communication system to disrupt or prevent signal transmission and reception, in a sense that it actually stops any signal to reach to the receiver. So what had happened here is, in this situation, the loss of log happens. You are not able to receive any satellite signal, so you are almost lost. Now, I was giving that example that suppose you are traveling in a jungle where there is no person who can guide you where to go and all. And in that situation, if someone jammed your GNSS or GPS signal, in that situation, you cannot know where to move, where to go. So there we understand what is the importance of navigation in our life today, right? And in such kind of intentional interference, they are creating such a threat that they may, disturb your secret missions in military or some defense and all that part. They are having such sort of situations, right? So you might have seen this in movie, that suppose a prime minister is traveling through a plane or through a car. They are having some cars following them, maybe in the front and at the back. So they are having some, jammers or something, so that jammer cannot affect the required signal. So they are there to scan and handle that situations too. So now if you have not observed, so you can definitely go and see such movies where you might be able to observe this. So how to do this GNSS spoofing? So basically what GNSS spoofing is, that this the forging and the transmission of navigation messages in order to manipulate the navigation solution of the GNSS receiver. Now one may say that what is the advantage? Now for an example, a truck is there, a truck or a ship is there in the ocean, and that I want to divert, which is maybe going from India to some other country, maybe China, maybe Pakistan, maybe somewhere else. Now if I want to change the route of that navigation, because sheep is having only way of seeing the path is navigation satellite signal. If anyhow, if those signals are getting affected or changed or modified, then sheep has to see that only. There is no other way. Now, in that situation, the sheep can be easily misguided to the required position. You can consider this as a hacked situation also, hijacking also, that they have hijacked the sheep of particular country reaching to a expected location. Okay, so here we need to receive the signal. See, the condition for the spoofing is your receiver and the intended receiver has to receive the same signal. I mean, spoofer and the intended receiver has to receive the same signal, same set of most probably the antenna or satellite and all. Now whatever the signal you are receiving, that has to be traveled through the GNSS spoofer. It changes the information inside it, and again it transmits the same data, right? But it is with the modified information. Now when this modified information signal is being received by the intended targeted receiver, as the signal strength is higher of this spoofer compared to the signal which is being received from the satellite, of course your antenna is meant to track onto the stronger signal, correct? And that is being received, and your intended targeted receiver can definitely affected by the spoofer and may start following the spoofing information or the message for the navigation for future. So even if a spoofer is not fully successful, he or she can still create significant error and jam GNSS signal over large area too. So it's not always that you need to misguide someone, but if you don't want allow them to track or getting communicate, then also the spoofer can help. Okay, they create some error, a severe error, that the position also gets changed. That is what we learned till or discussed till, right? So yeah, so receiver based spoofer is the similar thing what I just explained, that authenticate signal is being received, the data with code delay Doppler information may gets manipulated, and again the spoofer is transmitting the same signal. Now your targeted receiver is actually receiving both the signals, authenticate signal and the spoofing signal, but as this is coming from the terrestrial area only, it is not coming from the satellite. So of course the signal strength of this signal would be much higher compared to the authenticate signal. So antenna by default stronger signal pe hi tune hoga, because it is almost exactly the same kind of information, right? And this is how the spoofing happens. It's something, no, that your photograph is carrying by someone else, Mona Lisa drawing is carrying by someone else. How do you identify which one is original one? If a more clarity, more accuracy, much more good color combination is there, so definitely one will say, okay, this is the original, but that can be a fake one or it can be a spoofed one. So these are the things, I mean, in a mathematical way, it has to deal with the pseudo range and the effect Doppler, it can add on to that. So it identifies, effect delay, atmospheric delay or distance or multipath. It can add on those data and again transmit. So it look like original authenticated signal, but it is actually not. And this is how the spoofer normally works. Okay, it normally happens at the borders where to misguide some vehicles or some information, or I mean security purpose. Okay, so this is some literature what we have shown, that US spy drone tricked into Iran landing by GPS spoofing. So you can see the location of an aircraft is already changed so that it can land it somewhere else. So GPS spoofing is used to trick the British vessel into Chinese waters, right? These we have, and this is a 2011 case. I mean, you can see that these kind of threats are already existing, and now we are moving towards drone and the other unmanned aerial vehicles. So there also search, spoofing and jamming are the severe threats to handle them. Okay, they were exclusive, the drone vulnerable to terrorists hijacking the the situation. Then researchers use spoofing to hack into the flying drones, so are able to, that was a case recently, few years back, just when the suddenly there was a flying event of a drones, and suddenly all drones falls out. So somebody unintentionally switch on its car transmitter, I mean jo lighter hota hai, that actually acts an interference. So somehow that signal has affected and the all drones got stuck and they just fall down. So unknowingly also this thing happens. So till we don't trace it, we don't know whether we are getting authenticated signal or a fake signal. See, for the commercial or the normal users, nobody is going to hack us, nobody is going to spoof us. But it is meant for the special person, special category, the public or the sectors where such kind of authenticated signal are very much required to test and identify. So number of GNSS simulators have been designed for legal purposes. In the wrong hands can be used for spoofing also. So facility or the technology is normally developed for the betterment of the human beings, providing a better solution to the life. But there are the mindsets who basically deals this in a wrong direction and create such threats to the community. These are the GNSS simulator can be built with relatively low cost equipments. I mean, you can easily build a spoofer. It's possible, but okay. Even in that, there are classifications of GNSS attacks in terms of commercial signal simulator or probable software radio or coordinated attack by multiple phase lock to spoofers. So what intelligent spoofing you want to do, according to that the brain works and the solutions are there, but that you have to see that whether these are to be handled even very, very efficiently. Another a sub part of it is meconing, where GNSS record and playback systems record real GNSS signal and retransmit the signal to evaluate GNSS receivers. Here, while spoofing using this method cannot be used to impose user defense scenarios on a receiver. it can still cause the receiver to compute false location fixes using the transmitted real GNSS signal. So furthermore, this form of attack can be used for spoofing military GNSS signal. As I said, it is normally utilized for the border part. So overall extent of GPS dependencies, you can see ATM network, stock exchange, internet banking, power grids, energy plants, railways, switch towers, air traffic controls, ship routing, access GIS mapping, wireless internet, relay positions. They all are, possible that they all can be affected by such kind of threats, artificial interference. These are the other kinds of literature where straight talk on anti-spoofing, time is money, GPS spoofing can cost it, GPS jammers and spoofers threaten infrastructure, right? There are so many issues which have been raised in past few years that people were actually having this, the fear that spoofing or the jamming is very much severe to understand and apply, and somehow we started with that. Now, if I talk about jamming, so as I said, as a basic difference, jamming is just, the name itself is just jam the signal. Now, this jamming even has the categories or classification of jammers in terms of user-defined, structure-defined, and signal-defined. So for user, it can be military or civilian. For structure, it can be considered as group 1, 2, and 3. And signal, it can be considered as class 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there are a variety of jammers are available. These are military jammers or civilian jammers. Here, the middle one. Do you know what kind of jammer is this? This is very a known device, which is normally exists in all cars. This is a lighter kind of thing. As I said, no, unknowingly, if an antenna is associated with this car lighter and all, it can generate the signal which is actually unintentionally jamming it, the surrounding. Okay, these are the group 1, 2, and 3 kind of jammers. Group 1 jammers with auxiliary power supply. This type of commercial jammer typically fits in the cigarette lighter socket of automotive and easy to operate. Group 2 jammers with rechargeable battery and external antenna. This group can further be divided into single antenna and multiple antenna jammers. Group 3 with the rechargeable battery and without external antenna, and the antenna in this type of jammer is electrically short helical antennas. So class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are having this kind of jammer based on signal, like single tone continuous wave jammer, multi-tone continuous wave signal, then chirp signal with single sawtooth, or chirp signal with multiple sawtooth, or chirp jammer with frequency burst. So these are the signal type of jammer that you can generate certain type of signal and jam the signal of intended receiver. So this is kind of a thing that we did for the jamming also. For the NAVIC receiver, we created the scenario near the airport, and we have gone with the static and the dynamic scenario analysis, that how the NAVIC signal gets jammed and how does it affect the performance of the positioning. So in the static scenario, we employ live GNSS signal, created jamming signal. We develop the jamming signal in our lab. We test the scenarios where user controllable up to certain extent and repeatable. And in dynamic scenario, we went for the field trial near to airport, where the longer run is there, longer road is there. We did the similar thing, and we identified that how the jammer intensity affecting the signal and how the NAVIC receiver is responding to that. So this is our lab implementation of jammer based on SDR. This is how we could able to generate that on the software defined radio. And yeah, if I give you the jammer impact on signal strength of NAVIC receiver in dynamic scenario. So here, if you see, this is a without jammer, where we could able to receive all the satellite signal with a very good C by N 0, as in when we started the jammer. Okay, in the dynamic scenario. So dynamic scenario is what, that a car is having a receiver and the another car is having a jammer signal, and it is moving continuously near to or taking a ride near to that static receiver. So as in when it is coming nearer to the static receiver, the jamming signal intensity gets higher, and the satellite signal are almost in the loss of log situation. So here you must be able to analyze this result. See, this is where the signal was initially without jammer, right? So this is what the situation without jammer. As in when the jamming signal had started, the antenna signal, the satellite signal got dropped off to almost zero. I mean, this C by N0 is almost loss of log situation. After that, when the jammer have moved to the different distance, then again the satellite signal were able to receive. But as it coming nearer to that, or staying near to the receiver, we could able to see that almost for this duration we were not able to receive the signal. Okay, this is how we could able to analyze many variations into the satellite signal reception while the jamming was happening. So this is how the NAVIC receiver look like while when the jamming was there. You can see totally a loss of log situation. We could not able to receive the signal. Okay. And somehow, I mean, we understood that how the jamming is very impactful. But the major conclusion, we developed the jammer mitigation algorithm, and it was quite good, helpful in such a way that the loss of log duration we try to handle so that with the less loss of log situation. The cold start is not required, and the receiver can went into the again positioning situation very fast. So we cannot avoid the jammer signal, but we develop the algorithm in such a way that it can happen to make the receiver in a less loss of log situation, because we know if the receiver goes into the loss of log where no signal is coming up for the longer time, then again we need to restart the receiver and get into the synchronization with the satellite signal. Okay, so that was the situation what we did with the jammer situation. Performance evaluation of NAVIC receiver under the jamming effect, if I observed in terms of the PSDs, power spectral density, so we could able to see that, the green signal is giving you a without signal where almost continuous signal is able to see. But when we are going with the without with the jamming with case 1, B and C, it gives a different variation into the power spectral density. So we could able to see that the signal power was getting reduced, right? And this is that situation where the almost you can see that this is the area where this and this where receiver almost went into the loss of log situation. This is the correlation plots in terms of the different situation of distance with respect to jammer and the static receiver, where without jammer you are able to see the correlation peak. But if you see the different case 1A, B and C, where these peaks are, it's very difficult to identify which is the correlation peak here, because it has jammed the signal and we are not able to receive it correctly. So yeah, so that was what all about the jamming. Okay. The next case study I would like to highlight that is related to the unintentional radio frequency interference. This work is of one of the PhD student. She completed and awarded degree, doctorate degree. Okay, so what she actually identified, this is what her discovery is, that she could able to identify the Wi-Fi signal partially. It is considered as an out of band interference, of course, but the Wi-Fi signal, we do have Wi-Fi all over, right? So we were trying to capture the original signal from the different open spaces from field trials, and we try to process the data, we visualize the data, and somewhere we identify that when we were in the near to some region where the Wi-Fi signals are there, sometime we could able to observe some glitches into the signal. Now that was a curiosity point that where her PhD journey had started, and we could able to make it out that okay, what is the reason? Then overall thing had started where we placed the Wi-Fi router near to our RNSS antenna. This is the terrace of our building, where S-band signal, typically of course, S-band signal are having out of band interference region with the Wi-Fi 1 typical frequency. Okay, so they were getting affected, and that is what we could able to identify that how it was happening. So this is the region, you can see the gap, while 2483 to 2483.50 megahertz, it's a very less band, and sometimes if that frequency is coming up, then the out of band interference is affecting the signal. Okay, this is the receiver under the Wi-Fi effect, where you are able to see the overall band. Okay, and this is when the Wi-Fi signal is coming up. You can see the power level of the S-band signal was getting down. L5 was not getting affected because it is quite far in terms of frequency to the Wi-Fi compared to the S-band. So yeah, so we could able to observe that, okay, that the RNSS receiver with the S-band is having some issues, as S-band is the area where not major or no one is basically working in the satellite domain as well, or navigation domain as well. So this was the discovery that we could able to identify. And if a very strong signal is there, then you can see there is no S-band signal is being received here with the RNSS data. Now, so similar thing we could able to see into the graphs of CBAM0, where for the duration where the Wi-Fi signal or router was there, we could able to see that the signal is getting down, CBAM0 is getting down. Okay, this is the zoom version of the same, where you can see all the satellites almost are getting to the lowest CBAM0 or loss of log situation. Yeah. So yeah, so when we did the spectral analysis, that how do we identify that what are the the frequency part which are affecting the signal. So case 1 is basically give you the without unintentional interference, and case 2 is with intentional interference. Now here even we dealt with the analysis in terms of the amount of power which is being transmitted by the Wi-Fi router, okay, the antenna Wi-Fi signal, so that we can understand that what level of or what amount of power can actually bring the receiver into a loss of log situation and all. And after so many analysis, so many case studies, so many data reception and experimentation, we identify there are majorly 3 peaks which are coming up. And here if you see, with the green one is your without interference, while case 2 is with interference. So in green, this is only the peak. So it is giving you that one signal is existing. Now, if you see into the second case where the interference is there, you can see how down the original signal or the peak have gone and the other peaks have raised up. So here it is giving you something which is blocking the overall signal to receive further. Okay, see, this is the correlation plot. So here we are able to see the single peak very easily, but here it is very, very difficult to identify which is the where the peaks is. Okay, fine. So yeah, just a minute. Okay, so after that, we proposed the mitigation technique as well, so that we could able to handle it. That okay, how to make NAVIC more secure. So that have been towards the mitigation part of the same again, and she proposed a very good model. Somehow I could not able to put the plots here, the block diagram here, but that have bring us the solution to the problem what we have found, and that has been identified by the ISRO people as well. And later on, of course, now you can see the many papers are there related to this as well. You can identify that how the mitigation of the same have been carried out, and these that have made the receiver more prone to these unintentional interference also, where if someone is utilizing S-band as a chip receiver or signal to receive for the navigation or the positional area, then how it can be handled, or how it can give the continuous reception of the signal without having loss of log. So we have to save the receiver being into the loss of log situation. If the receiver is continuously receiving the signal, then there is no issue. It is very much possible that receiver can navigate you to the required locations. But if it is there in loss of log situation for a longer duration, so our observation says that it has to be restart so that it can resynchronize to the satellite signals and give the position accuracy as and when required. Yeah, so if you want to go over the resolving or error, see basically what I have focused today on related to the types of errors which are possible, their importance, and majorly the artificial errors or interference we can say, which normally we don't consider, but what we observed while we have started with this research, that of course these actually matters and it is affecting the signal too. So anyhow, the solution have been already proposed. So that is not the issue. That NAVIC can definitely work very, very efficiently compared to any of the GNSS signals which are being received in the Indian region, especially because it is meant for the India region. So it has to be very, very accurate and very much easy. Okay, so with respect to the resolving errors, I need to give another talk where you can deal with the various options which are possible to avoid majority of the errors. Maybe a multi-constellation. Very first thing, that we should not rely only on a single constellation system. Rather, one should have multi-constellation, so that in any situation we won't be in a situation there no satellite is visible. As I said, if we are in a very congested area where the higher number of buildings or the congested jungle or trees are available, we are not able to see even that was one of the observation while we are doing the field trial, that under the bridges, metal bridges, under the metal bridges, we are not able to receive the satellite signals. But when we are above the metal bridges, we could able to see. So these are the things when we enter into the real life to record the data, to analyze the data, we could able to identify that, okay, these are also the situations where the GNSS signal gets affected. Another is the multi-frequency. Now, why multi-frequency? Because multi-frequency helps to compare the certain atmospheric errors or certain other errors, so that you can have a better correction ability at the receiver end. Okay, if you deals with only one frequency, for an example, maybe L1 or maybe L5 or maybe S, now in that situation, any of the things what I have basically covered today, anyone can affect, and the performance of the receiver may be challenged. So multi-frequency gives you a breathing area for the receiver, that it can switch to the another frequency and it can continue to give the positioning or navigation facility. Another is one can go with the code and carrier phase precision analysis measurements and provide the PPP solutions to the system. Very well known is the differential GNSS, which is not to explain further because it is quite open and known to GNSS people who are working in the same domain. There are satellite-based augmentation systems even available, like Wide Area Augmentation System, then European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Services, MTSAT satellite-based augmentation system, Gagan GPS-aided geo-augmented navigation system, system for differential corrections and monitoring, ground-based augmentation system. So these are even in combination of your GNSS. This augmentation system even helps to have the better signal reception and reducing the effect of errors. Real-time kinematic is also there. Network RTK is also possible to create to have the real-time corrections. Precise point positioning is one of the challenging area where people can definitely jump into it and work. And in the NAVIC also, it is definitely, I mean, it's an open research, one should definitely try. And at the end, of course, the post-processing, because if you have a good receiver computation facility available at the GNSS receivers, you can apply very good algorithms for the post-processing to handle the errors which are being generated or affecting the positioning thing. So yeah, this is my research team. So without them, I know I would have not able to do such a good and quality research work. So Dr. Darshana, Dr. Priyanka, Dr. Mehul, and Virendra, they are my pillars for my research related to the NAVIC, and I always appreciate them. So summary, if I go with, yeah, so some of the GNSS errors could be as small as fraction of a signal cycle. Receiver noise error, whether other errors can be the order of dozens of meters, like atmospheric and multipath. So we need to deal with the situation and the application, what kind of error is available and how do we need to solve it, what is our requirement of precision, and according to that the solution need to be provided. Receiver clock bias can grow up to thousands of meters and thus needs to be modeled, of course. So it has certain errors we cannot neglect. Intentional error sources can completely deny the GNSS services. So regardless their scale, GNSS errors need to be mitigated to achieve accepted navigation accuracy. Conventional civilian satellite receivers are more prone to interference. Both natural and artificial interference can be detected at different processing levels of the receiver. The various techniques of interference mitigation can be applied at different level of NAVIC receiver as well, especially NAVIC. The interference cancellation is the current research area to make RNSS NAVIC receiver more robust and secure at different levels, like at the front and or at the baseband. So yeah, this is what I wanted to say. Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere. So where you want to reach, navigation, satellite is watching us, and we need satellite, and without them, we are incomplete. So that's it. I'm ending my talk here. And now I would like to see that whether it was worth with you or with all of you being in this particular talk. So I would be happy to answer if any queries or any discussions. The floor is open to all. And I apologize for the in-between disconnection due to some light issue, power issue. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shah, for your excellent presentation. It was quite informative. And I must congratulate you for the type of work you are carrying out in your own group. It's quite impressive. And I would like to, before I put one or two small questions, I would like to request you if you can share some of your paper on multipath mitigations and send it to my address. I'll be grateful. And
actually, one of the paper on multipath is already submitted in conference. So once it gets published, I definitely share it with you.
okay. So whenever it is possible, you can send it by email. Don't give me the reference because it may not be always possible to download the paper.
No problem. I'll definitely share.
Okay.
That would
Okay.
be great.
And I have a small curiosity to know. You have
Yes.
shown correlation plot,
Correct.
peak correlation plot. I was wondering how could you get access to the correlation, because what data you have accessed from your GPS receiver that gives you correlation, or it is a simulation data.
Correct. Sir, actually, these are the data what we have received from the Accord NAVIC receiver. The raw data have been recorded and analyzed. I mean, and based on that, we could able to generate this correlation plot in the MATLAB. It was not a real-time situation possible. So we did the post-processing, we generated that correlation plots, because the intentional or unintentional interference, both the cases where we need to generate the signal at the lab level, like based on SDR and the Wi-Fi router. So we mixed up the RNSS signal and the intentional and unintentional signals to the received data, and then we analyze that how it is affecting the performance.
Okay, my next time, my curiosity to clear up, you have shown your correlation graph, it is a 3D. What is your other X and Y axis?
Yeah, let me see. It was just a minute, sir. It was, let me just clarify that. Yeah, one is the number of samples, another is the frequency, and the correlation power.
Okay, that's clear. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you,
And
sir.
now I will request Jaideep to coordinate the chat box questions. Jaideep.
Yes, sir. So first question is from Amit De. The question is: are signal errors due to atmosphere quite random, or there is some sort of annual periodicity?
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you very much clearly.
I would
The question is: are signal errors due to atmosphere quite random, or is there any sort of annual periodicity?
Sir, see,
Seta, before you answer the question, I would request all the participants, please unmute your speaker. Otherwise, it is creating a lot of disturbance. Even the speaker is not able to hear the question properly. Then, when your term is come, then please unmute your speaker. Thank you.
Am I audible?
yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you so much. See, the atmospheric error, if we see, we have to, they cannot be modeled, but it has to be observed on the typical data servers, which gives us the detail in terms of the ionospheric content and all. So if you are there in the similar research, I would be happy to share you the information related to that. You may email me your queries in detail. So I will be answer that from where you can get this data. Typically for the atmospheric errors to study and analyze the same thing at your end.
Now the next question is, all the error components results in extra delay in receiver point of view. How it will differentiate corresponding delays?
Signal, I have very much clearly mentioned that the signal which is coming from the satellite is a composite signal. You cannot differentiate individual errors here, but as we have looked the error budget equation, you can easily identify. Suppose you want to work on ionospheric error individually, then you have to focus on that part only. All the errors, if you want to work at a time, that won't be possible, because you need to model the errors and then you may apply the corrections to that. Okay, so, and even all the errors are not even present at all the time with the same intensity. So that cannot be directly solved, but definitely with the processing part, post processing part, you may handle them individually. I hope I have answered the query of the participant.
So the next question is, how multipath error is related to Doppler frequency?
Okay, if you understand the multipath correctly, then as the direction of the signal gets changed with respect to reflection and all, there is a partial variation into the phase. So that basically gives you, and your satellite is in movement, your Earth is in movement, the motion is by default everywhere, and the bending of the signal. So this motion is actually affecting the scenario, because the location of the satellite signal which is coming to it in a few seconds of the travel, that the source have already changed the location of it. So definitely due to reflection and all, there is a possibility to see whether how much variation of the frequency you can observe, and that's why the Doppler shift is required to observe in this particular area. But as I've mentioned, that individual multipath cannot be analyzed.
And he has also
Yeah.
asked for some.
Jaideep, please,
Yes,
before you put the question, please name of the participant who has put the question. It will be very interesting for him itself.
okay, sir. So this is another part of the question from Satish Nayak, that he requested from some literature reference related to the multipath error and Doppler frequency.
Okay, I would say that you can definitely email me. I'll forward whatever the literature survey we did. I'll share you the table that what kind of paper we have referred to apply. So you can refer Dr. Hablani's paper. He has also worked very much onto multipath scenarios. You can refer his paper.
So next question from Chaya Bharma, that can we utilize the electron density data of ionosphere observed in the time interval for a particular day from satellite only to reduce the ionospheric error in GPS positioning?
See, single day analysis is fine, but ionospheric concentrations are changing. So you need a constant error correction in such scenarios. You may definitely observe it and analyze and apply as and when required.
I'd like to supplement to what Dr. Saha told, that ionospheric error, if you would like to apply on any signal, you must know the ray path, in which path it is coming. And unless you have an idea of the total electron content, you cannot make any correction. So what she rightly told, that it varies from path to path. So just getting the electron density content and all this thing doesn't really help you. It should be in situ measurement.
Okay, sir. The next question is from Kavita Gudad. So question is it possible to differentiate actual signal and spoofed signal by comparing power levels of SNR?
A very interesting question. See, as I said, spoof the signal. If you want to observe, then your continuous monitoring is required. And definitely the spoof the signal would have the higher signal to noise ratio compared to the satellite signal. So it can be one of the parameter to create identification or bifurcation between the spoofed signal and the original signal. But keep in mind that spoofed signal C by M0 or SNR won't be so high even. So that has to be continuous monitoring in that, or what you can do is you can apply that into your lab level or some typical area where you are receiving your continuous satellite signal, and then you start your spoofer and just check that what variation you have observed for a moment, because it is always for a moment. Then your antenna is going to switch on to the spoofed signal by default because it is a stronger signal. So that instant is required to identify, and that has to be very intelligently monitored. Then only you can say it is spoofed. Otherwise, it is going to be known when you have reached to somewhere where the receiver is not intended to. Thank you, Kavita.
So that's all. There are no more questions in this chat box. So I will request Professor Paramasar Banerjee to conclude the session.
Thank you so much for listening me very patiently. I hope I have answered all your queries. And still, if you have any queries, you can definitely drop me an email.
Dr. Saha, you have done an excellent job by giving your presentation and also satisfying most of the questions so well.
Thank you,
And
sir.
I particularly would like to congratulate for the excellent work you are continuing. I would like to keep interaction with you.
Sure.
Not always I could keep my word because of my other assignment and also my laziness because of my age. Uh, anyway, this is a good work and it's excellent work. So this is the time that we should close this session. And I would like to thank you and have a nice day and have a nice work. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day and have a great workshop ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
And with this, we'd like to close this session and also we'll break for lunch. Maybe up at 2:45, we'll again reassemble for the next speaker. Thank you very much and have a nice lunch. Okay, Jaideep, I will